I married the man I deeply loved, and we finally became the couple I had always dreamed of. To make it even more perfect, we were having a beautiful wedding ceremony, surrounded by the blessings of family and friends. I felt so happy, thinking that even my parents, who had passed away, would be smiling from above. But I had no idea that a terrible event was waiting for me. I will never forgive those who ruined everything, and I am determined to get back at them. My name is Mary. When I was 27, my boyfriend Thomas, who was 2 years older, proposed to me. My father had died when I was young, and my mother passed away from illness 2 years ago. During my hardest times, Thomas supported me both physically and emotionally. We got married on the anniversary of our 2.5 years together, starting our happy life as newlyweds. Since Thomas was busy with work, we decided to wait until his schedule cleared up before holding the wedding ceremony. On his days off, we went to the wedding venue and started planning for the big day. We set the date and began making the guest list. I thought about inviting my aunt and uncle, who had been like parents to me after my father passed away. They brought me meals when my mother was busy working, kept me company so I wouldn't feel lonely, and helped with chores when my mother became sick. Even when things were difficult, they were always there for me, giving me hope. My aunt would reassure me, saying, "Your mom will get better, just believe and wait for her." Because of all they had done, I wanted them to sit in the family section on the bride's side at my wedding, so I visited them to tell them this. When I arrived, my aunt greeted me warmly, with tears in her eyes, saying, "Mary, congratulations on your marriage." I thanked her and then asked if they would sit in the family seats at my wedding. She agreed happily and then brought out a large box. "Mary, open this," she said. Inside was a beautiful, pure white wedding dress, made from elegant silk. It was a perfect mix of style and sweetness. The neckline was lined with delicate lace, and the dress had a lovely A-line shape with floral embroidery along the hem. It was clear that this dress had been custom-made just for me. Stunned, I asked, "Why, how did you get this?" My aunt explained that my mother had made it herself. Despite her illness, my mother had worked on this dress, sewing it day by day to fit my petite frame. She had asked my aunt to give it to me if I ever got married. This dress was filled with all the love my mother had left, created just for me in her final days. "Mary dear, you must wear this dress at your wedding. Your mother would be so pleased," my aunt said, her eyes filling with tears and a warm smile on her face. Her words touched me deeply, and I felt tears in my own eyes. "Thank you, Auntie, for keeping it safe all this time. I promise I'll wear this dress at my wedding. You have to come and see me in it," I replied, holding the dress my mother had lovingly made. When I got home, I hung the dress on my bedroom wall and looked at it with determination. I was set on making my wedding a success. Wearing this dress in memory of my mother, the feeling only grew stronger as the days went by. Then one day, disaster struck. I came home from work and noticed that the dress, which should have been hanging on my wall, was gone. "What? It's gone? Why? I left it right here." I panicked and pulled out my phone to call the police. Just then, my husband walked in. "Oh, Mary, what's wrong?" he asked, seeing my tears and sensing something was wrong. My dress is gone. I had it hanging right here. I think someone stole it," I cried, but his reaction took me by surprise. "Oh, is that it?" he said casually. "What do you mean, Thomas? Do you know something?" I asked, confused. His answer shocked me. "Of course, my sister said she's getting married soon and wanted to borrow your dress." "What?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Yes, I mentioned the dress to her, and she asked if she could borrow it. I thought it'd be fine, so I agreed." She came over and picked it up, using the spare key from our mailbox. He had lent my precious wedding dress to his sister without even asking me. I felt anger building up inside me. "What the hell, Thomas? That dress was handmade by my mother, specifically for me. Didn't I tell you that? It's perfectly tailored to my size. How could you lend it out without asking?" "Calm down," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "It's not like it's a one-time use thing. You can still wear it. What's the big deal? Our wedding is still a while away, and my sister was happy she wouldn't have to buy a dress." I was furious. "That's not the point. I never gave permission for this. That dress is special. It was meant for me to wear first. Why would you let your sister wear it before I even get to?" Even after all my explanations, he still didn't seem to understand my feelings. I tried to explain why I was so upset, but my husband refused to apologize or even admit he was wrong. Instead, he sighed in frustration and said, "Mary, you're being too petty. Stop acting like a spoiled child. Petty? Spoiled? I thought, anger flaring up inside me. I was upset because this dress was something my mother had made for me. It was meant for me, not for my sister-in-law. I was done with his careless comments that completely dismissed my feelings. I'm going to your parents' house tomorrow to get my dress back from your sister, I said firmly. What, tomorrow? My sister's fiancé and his parents are coming over then, he said, sounding annoyed. Don't interrupt them. Interrupt? You've got some nerve. Let me be clear, no one will convince me to let your sister wear that dress, I replied. The next day, I took off work and went to my in-laws' house. As I walked up to the open front door, I could hear lively voices inside. Quietly stepping in, I listened from nearby. Wow, you made this dress yourself? That's amazing, Cynthia, said a man's voice, who I assumed was Cynthia's fiancé. Oh, it's nothing like that, she replied, pretending to be humble. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was flaunting my mother's handmade wedding dress, claiming it as her own. It took a lot of time, but I really wanted my dream dress for my wedding, so I ended up making it myself, she continued. At that moment, something inside me snapped. Her dream dress? This was the dress my mother had poured her love into, just for me. Before I even realized it, I had walked into the room and grabbed the dress from my sister-in-law's hands. This is mine, I shouted, my voice shaking with anger. Everyone turned to me, startled. My father-in-law looked shocked and asked, "Whoa, Mary, what's going on?" Ignoring him, I looked straight at Cynthia and revealed the truth to everyone. This dress was handmade by my mother, just for me. Your daughter took it from my room without asking. Everyone stared at me in disbelief, their eyes wide. Cynthia, on the other hand, looked pale. Cynthia, is this true? Her fiancé asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Desperate to cover it up, Cynthia tried to protest. No, it's not like that. I really did make this myself. I realized we wouldn't get anywhere with more arguing, so I challenged her. Why don't you try it on then? Since my mother made it to fit me, I don't think it will fit you. Cynthia was taller and more toned than I was. There was no way the dress would fit her. Cynthia was trying her best to fit into the dress, which was clearly made for my smaller frame. Just then, my husband arrived, his face red with anger. Mary, what are you doing? Are you trying to ruin my sister's wedding? He shouted. What are you talking about? I shot back. If anyone's wedding is being ruined, it's mine. Ignoring my frustration, he went on to say something even more shocking. Shut up, we cancelled our wedding, so just give the dress to my sister. Cancelled? What do you mean? I asked, stunned. That's right, he replied firmly. My sister said she's short on money, so we gave her the $50,000 we'd saved for our wedding. Since there's no wedding anymore, we don't need the dress, right? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He had lent my dress to his sister without asking, cancelled our wedding, and even gave away our savings. It was as if our marriage meant nothing to him. Realizing how little he valued us, I felt my love for him fading. Seeing my silence, he assumed he had won. Now, give that dress back to my sister, he demanded. You have no objections to canceling, right? Fine, I replied calmly. Let's get a divorce then. Huh? My husband looked completely taken aback. You heard me, I want a divorce. I can't be with someone who tramples on people's feelings so easily, I said firmly. Wait, what? Divorce? That's ridiculous, he stammered, panicked. But I was done. I turned to leave, holding the dress tightly. Just then, Cynthia grabbed the end of the dress. Pulling it hard, the dress tore, leaving it in a ruined state. My husband and Cynthia burst out laughing as if they found it hilarious. Serves you right, Mary, she sneered. This wouldn't have happened if you'd just lent me the dress quietly. You brought this on yourself. I felt tears fill my eyes, not because the wedding was cancelled, but because this precious dress, made by my mother, was now destroyed. It was something I wanted to keep forever, and now these awful people had ruined it. At that moment, Cynthia's fiancé stood up and spoke quietly. I guess we're done, too. Everyone turned to look at him in shock. Wait, are you serious? Cynthia cried, panicking. You're calling off our engagement? Why? He looked at her with a stern, disappointed expression. Why? It's simple. I can't marry someone who would do something so thoughtless and cruel without hesitation. Even his parents seemed to share his disappointment, looking at her with quiet disapproval. As Cynthia's fiancé and his parents were getting ready to leave, Cynthia frantically yelled, Wait a minute, It's ridiculous to end our engagement over something like this, right? Mom, Dad, don't you agree? But her pleas didn't change anything. Her parents just looked at her with disappointment. Wait, Mom, Dad, why are you looking at me like that? She asked, panicking. Her father suddenly shouted, "Get out, you're a disgrace." Even Cynthia, usually so confident, began to cry under his harsh words. "You're so cruel, this is too much," she sobbed. "Stop crying," her father said. "I didn't raise someone who could treat others' feelings so carelessly. I don't even recognize you as my daughter right now." As Cynthia broke down in tears, my husband tried to step in. "Dad, Mom, please don't be so hard on her. She didn't mean it that way." But his father turned on him as well. "You too, Thomas? You completely disregarded Mary's feelings. Get out of this house along with Cynthia, you foolish son." Stunned, my husband just stood there, speechless. He had never expected his own parents to turn against him. Then my mother-in-law came over to me, bowing her head in apology. "I'm so sorry, Mary. We believed our daughter when she said she'd made the dress herself. We had no idea." "It's okay," I replied, trying to stay calm, "but I can't stay married to Thomas anymore." "That's understandable," she said gently. "It's our daughter's fault, and we don't want you to worry about this any longer. Go on and live your life in peace." Her words touched me deeply. My in-laws had always been very kind to me, and I knew this was hard on them too. I felt a bit guilty that things had come to this, but I knew I couldn't stay with Thomas anymore. "Mary, I'm sorry. Let's have a real wedding, just don't file for divorce yet," he pleaded, realizing how serious things were only after being disowned by his parents. But I was done. I couldn't go back to someone who had shown me such disrespect. "I'll live my own life. I can be happy without you," I replied firmly. Hearing this, Thomas collapsed to his knees in defeat. After thanking my in-laws for their kindness, I left their house. I packed my things and moved to my aunt's house. She was surprised by everything that happened, but she respected my feelings and welcomed me with open arms. My aunt even managed to mend the torn parts of my mother's dress, bringing it back to its original beauty. After that, I filed for divorce and requested alimony from Thomas. Since he had secretly given our wedding savings to his sister, I was able to get a bit more because of that. Since being disowned, my ex-husband and sister-in-law are now living together in the home we once shared. My sister-in-law, who had planned to be a housewife after marriage, is now unemployed, and Thomas has to cover both of their expenses. In the future, if I ever get another chance to marry, I'll be sure to choose my partner carefully, and when I do have that wedding, I'll proudly wear my mother's handmade wedding dress.
I'm Sophia, 32 years old, a single mom, and I work hard as a marketing executive to provide for my daughter, Lily. She's 8 and the center of my world. But recently, our lives were turned upside down. The doctor's words still echo in my head. "Miss Thompson, I'm afraid Lily has a rare heart condition. She'll need surgery, urgently." Every night since, I lie awake, replaying those words, struggling to balance work, taking care of Lily, and now planning for her life-saving surgery. Just when I thought things couldn't get more overwhelming, my sister Olivia called for a family meeting. We gathered at our parents' house. Mom, Dad, Olivia, my younger brother Jake, and me. Olivia practically bounced with excitement, flashing her engagement ring. "I have amazing news," she squealed. "We're having a destination wedding in Bali." As everyone gasped in awe, my stomach tightened. I knew what was coming next. "It's happening next month, and I need everyone there. No excuses." I took a deep breath. "Liv, I'm so happy for you, but Lily's surgery is next month. I can't leave her." The room fell silent, then came the onslaught. "Sophia, this is your sister's special day," Mom scolded. Dad chimed in. "Can't you reschedule the surgery?" "Yeah, soft, don't be so selfish," Jake added, not even looking at me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Selfish. I was talking about my daughter's life. Olivia's face twisted into a pout. "You always do this, Sophia. You always try to steal my spotlight." Memories rushed back. Olivia's recitals overshadowing my soccer games, her graduation celebrated more extravagantly than mine, her achievements always prioritized. I fought back tears. "That's not fair, Liv. You know that's not true." "Well, if you really cared about this family, you'd find a way to be there," Olivia snapped. I glanced around, hoping for some support, but all I saw were disappointed faces. No one met my gaze. I stood up, my voice trembling. I'm sorry, but I can't abandon Lily when she needs me most. The weight of isolation settled on me as I left the house. How could they ask me to choose between my family and my child's life? The unfairness of it all made my head spin. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, her small hand found mine. Mommy, are you okay? You look sad. I forced a smile. I'm fine, sweetheart, just thinking about grown-up stuff. Her eyes widened. Is it about my heart? Don't worry about that, honey, I said, kissing her forehead. Mommy's going to take care of everything. As I turned off the light, closing her door, I leaned against the wall, torn between my love for my daughter and the crushing expectations of my family. The following weeks blurred into long nights of work, endless spreadsheets, and every extra shift I could take. Every penny counted. One evening, after Lily had fallen asleep, I decided to call my parents, hoping they'd cooled off and would understand. Hey Mom, I was hoping we could talk about Lily's surgery. Sophia, now's not a good time, Mom said, her tone clipped. We're busy with wedding preparations. I swallowed my frustration. I understand, but this is important. Remember that joint account we set up for emergencies? I was thinking of using it for Lily's medical expenses. There was a long pause. Well, about that, my stomach dropped as I logged into the banking app. The account was empty. What happened to the money? I asked, my voice shaking. Dad came on the line. Sophia, don't overreact. We had some unexpected expenses for Olivia's wedding. You used our emergency fund for a wedding? I could barely believe what I was hearing. It's not just any wedding, Mom interjected. It's your sister's special day. You're being selfish again, Sophia. Selfish? My daughter needed life-saving surgery. I hung up, the sting of their betrayal fresh in my mind. Later that week, I ran into Jake at the grocery store. Hey Soph, how are you holding up? For a moment, I saw the brother I used to know. It's tough, Jake. I could really use some support. He shifted uncomfortably. Look, I get it. But maybe you should just suck it up and come to the wedding. It would make things easier for everyone. Easier for everyone except Lily and me, you mean? I said bitterly. Jake's face hardened. Don't put this on me, Sophia. You're the one causing all this drama. He walked away, and I felt the last thread of hope snap. The day before they were set to leave for Bali, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off some misplaced mail. As I approached the door, I overheard Olivia's voice. I just don't understand why she's being so difficult. It's like she's trying to ruin my wedding on purpose. Now, Mom soothed. We know how Sophia can be, always needing to be the center of attention. Exactly. Olivia chimed in, her voice full of frustration. I bet Lily isn't even that sick. Sophia's probably exaggerating to get sympathy. I stood frozen outside the door, unable to move as they tore me apart. The people who were supposed to love me unconditionally were dismissing my daughter's life like it was nothing more than an inconvenience. The next morning, I watched from my window as they loaded their cars, laughing and excited for their trip. Not one of them looked back at our house. Not one of them came to say goodbye. I sank to the floor, sobs shaking my body. How could they do this? How could they abandon us when we needed them the most? Mommy? Lily's small voice came from behind me. Why are you crying? I quickly wiped my tears and forced a smile. It's nothing, sweetie. Mommy's just a little tired. I hugged her close, making a silent vow to myself. We would get through this, just the two of us. I would never let anyone hurt my little girl the way they had hurt us. One sleepless night, an idea popped into my head. I'd seen stories of people raising money online for medical expenses. Maybe, just maybe. The next day, I set up a crowdfunding page. My hands trembled as I typed out our story, laying bare the raw truth of our situation. I hit post and held my breath. At first, nothing happened. Then, ping, a donation. Then another, and another. My phone buzzed. It was Sarah, a coworker. Sophia, I just saw your post. I had no idea what you were going through. We're all chipping in at the office, she said. I was overwhelmed. People I barely knew were reaching out, offering help and kind words. The next day at work, my boss, Rachel, called me into her office. My heart sank. Was this about all the overtime I had been working? Sophia, why didn't you tell me how bad things were? Rachel's eyes were filled with concern. I didn't want to bring my personal problems to work, I mumbled. Nonsense. "We're family here," she said, handing me an envelope. "It's an advance on your salary, and I'm giving you flexible hours. Your priority right now is Lily." I couldn't hold back the tears. "Thank you, Rachel. I don't know what to say." As I left her office, I overheard two colleagues whispering, "Can you believe what Sophia's family did? Choosing a wedding over her daughter's surgery. Disgusting." A part of me felt vindicated, but mostly, I just felt sad. Word of our situation spread, and soon the local news reached out to share our story. Before I knew it, I was sitting in front of a camera, telling the whole city what we'd been through. "And your family?" the reporter asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. "They're not helping at all." I swallowed hard. No, they made their choice. The story aired that night, and my phone exploded with messages of support. Donations poured in even faster. At Lily's next hospital visit, we met Elena, a child life specialist. She had a warmth that instantly put Lily at ease. "You know, Sophia," Elena said one day as we watched Lily play, "you're doing an amazing job. Not everyone could handle this with such grace." I laughed bitterly. "Grace? I feel like I'm barely holding it together." Elena squeezed my hand. "That's the thing about strength. It's not about never falling apart. It's about picking yourself up every time you do." I threw myself into the final preparations for the surgery: work, hospital visits, last-minute fundraising. I was running on pure adrenaline. Finally, the day arrived. I held Lily's hand as they wheeled her into surgery, my heart pounding. "I love you, Mommy," she whispered. "I love you too, baby, so much." The wait was agonizing. Every minute felt like an eternity, but finally the doctor emerged with a smile. The surgery was a success. "Lily's going to be just fine." Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. I sobbed, I laughed, and I thanked every force I could think of. Later, as I sat by Lily's bedside, watching her sleep peacefully, my phone buzzed. It was Jake. "Hey, Soph. How did the surgery go? We just got back from Bali and heard about everything. I'm so sorry." I turned off the phone without replying. They had made their choice, and now I was making mine. As I looked at my brave little girl, I felt a mix of emotions: relief, exhaustion, and yes, anger at my family. But mostly, I felt hope. We had made it through the worst, and we had done it without them. The following weeks were filled with hospital visits, recovery milestones, and the realization that Lily and I were stronger than I had ever imagined. Each day, I watched my little fighter grow stronger. We spent hours playing games, reading stories, and talking. It felt like we were getting to know each other all over again. While Lily napped, I checked my emails. One from Rachel caught my eye. "Sophia, your performance these past months has been exceptional. We'd like to offer you a promotion to senior marketing manager. You've more than earned it." I could hardly believe it. After everything we'd been through, things were finally starting to look up. But life had other plans. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Local family chooses destination wedding over child's life-saving surgery. My stomach dropped as I read on. Someone had leaked our story to the media, and it had gone viral. Olivia's wedding photos were all over social media, but not in the way she'd imagined. The comments were brutal. How could they abandon their granddaughter like that? What kind of mother chooses a beach vacation over her niece's life? I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction, but guilt followed swiftly. I didn't want this. A few days later, Elena called. "Sophia, have you seen the news? Your father's company is under investigation for misuse of resources." I hadn't, but a quick search confirmed it. Dad had apparently used company funds for their Bali trip. Then came the text from Jake. "Soph, can we talk? I'm so sorry about everything." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "I'm glad you're sorry, Jake, but I need time. Please respect that." As for Mom, the stress took its toll. She was hospitalized for exhaustion and high blood pressure. Meanwhile, Lily and I were moving forward. "Lily, how would you feel about moving to a new house?" I asked one evening. Her eyes lit up. "Can I have a purple room?" I laughed. "Absolutely." On moving day, as we stood in front of our new home, my phone buzzed again. It was Rachel. "Sophia, you won't believe it. We just landed that big account we were hoping for." I grinned. "That's fantastic. We should celebrate." "Absolutely. Bring Lily. Elena is coming too." As I hung up, a wave of gratitude washed over me. We had been through hell, but we had come out stronger. We had a new home, new friends, and a new life ahead of us. Now, I have a question for you. If you were in Sophia's position, would you ever forgive your family for choosing a wedding over your child's life-saving surgery? Or do you believe some betrayals are unforgivable, no matter who commits them? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hey there, I'm Pernilla, a 28-year-old Danish girl trying to navigate life in the USA. So there I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop in downtown Chicago, sketching logo ideas, when this guy walks in. Tall, dark, and handsome doesn't even begin to cover it. That was Brandon. 3 whirlwind months later, we were saying, I do. You're sure about this, Pernilla? My best friend and coworker, Aisha, asked, helping me into my wedding dress. I mean, you barely know his family. I laughed it off. Come on, Aisha. They're going to love me. Oh, how wrong I was. Enter Evelyn, Brandon's mom, and Courtney, his sister. From day one, it was clear I wasn't what they had in mind for their precious Brandon. So, Pernilla, Evelyn began during our first family dinner, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. How long do you plan on staying in America? I tried to laugh it off. Well, I'm married to Brandon now, so I guess I'm here for good. The silence that followed was deafening. As weeks turned into months, I did everything I could to fit in. I learned to make apple pie, watched football, even started saying, ow. Okay, that one didn't stick, but nothing seemed to be enough. Honey, maybe you could try dressing a bit more American? Brandon suggested one day, eyeing my colorful Danish sweater. I frowned. What's wrong with how I dress? He backpedaled quickly. Nothing, is just, you know how mom is. And that was the problem. I was starting to know exactly how Evelyn was, and it wasn't pretty. As Thanksgiving approached, I threw myself into preparations, thinking this would be my chance to finally feel like part of the family. I'm thinking of making a traditional Danish dish alongside the turkey, I told Brandon, excited. He hesitated. Maybe stick to the classics this year, babe. Mom's pretty particular about Thanksgiving. I tried not to let the disappointment show. Sure, whatever you think is best. The day before Thanksgiving, Evelyn called. Pernilla, dear, why don't you come over early to help with preparations? Of course, I said, ignoring Aisha's eye roll beside me. Great. Oh, and don't worry about bringing anything. We've got it all covered. As I hung up, Aisha shook her head. Girl, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. I sighed. They're family now, Aisha. I have to try. The next morning, Brandon and I pulled up to his family's suburban home. As we walked to the door, he squeezed my hand. Ready for your first American Thanksgiving? I nodded, pushing down the knot of anxiety in my stomach. Ready as I'll ever be. Little did I know I was walking into a disaster that would change everything. The moment I stepped into Evelyn's kitchen, I could feel the tension in the air. The smell of roasting turkey mixed with the unmistakable stench of thinly veiled hostility. Oh, Pernilla, dear, Evelyn said sweetly, why don't you set the table? The good china is in the cabinet. I nodded, eager to help. But before I could reach for the plates, Courtney swooped in. I've got it, Mom. Pernilla probably doesn't know how we do things here. The jabs continued all afternoon. Every family story conveniently left me out. Every tradition was explained to me like I was a child. We always watch the parade, Pernilla. It's an American thing, Courtney said slowly, as if I couldn't understand. Finally, we sat down to eat. I noticed my plate looked different. The turkey seemed off, the texture strange. Enjoy your meal, everyone, Evelyn smiled, her eyes gleaming as they met mine. I took a bite and almost gagged. The taste was awful, nothing like turkey. As I looked around in confusion, I caught glimpses of smirks. Poorly concealed laughter rippled through the table. Is something wrong, Pernilla? Brandon's uncle asked innocently. It hit me suddenly. This wasn't turkey. It was dog food. My stomach turned. Oh my God, I whispered, pushing my chair back. How could you? Evelyn's laughter was the loudest. Come now, Pernilla, it's just a little joke. Don't be so sensitive. I turned to Brandon, hoping for support, but he just sat there with a weak smile. Babe, they're just teasing. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? I felt like I was going to be sick. Without a word, I grabbed my purse and ran out, ignoring the calls behind me. As I drove away, tears blurred my vision. Memories of every slight and snub flashed before me. Evelyn accidentally spilling wine on my favorite dress. Courtney forgetting to invite me to her engagement party. Brandon never standing up for me. My phone buzzed nonstop. Brandon's text swung between dismissive and pleading. Come on, it was just a prank. Don't overreact. Babe, please come back. You're embarrassing me. My family thinks you can't take a joke. I ignored them all and drove straight to Aisha's apartment. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug. What happened? She asked gently, leading me to the couch. Through my sobs, I told her everything. With every word I shared, Aisha's face darkened. That's it, she said firmly. You're leaving him tonight. I hesitated. But maybe if I just try harder. No, Aisha cut me off. This isn't about you trying harder. They're abusive, Pernilla. And Brandon, he's just as bad for allowing it. Deep down, I knew she was right. This wasn't love. This wasn't family. That night, while Brandon was still at his parents', I packed my bags. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter with a note. I deserve better than dog food and disrespect. Goodbye, Brandon. The next morning, I filed for divorce. As I signed the papers, a weight lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I could breathe. But as I left the lawyer's office, my phone pinged with a message from Evelyn. I always knew you weren't good enough for our family. Run back to Denmark, little girl. I stared at the screen, a new emotion rising in my chest. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. If they wanted to play games, fine. They were about to learn that this Danish girl could bite back. The weeks following Thanksgiving were a blur of tears, anger, and paperwork. I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction. One day, my boss noticed my distress and approached me. Pernilla, is everything okay? You seem different. I broke down, spilling the whole ugly story. To my surprise, she was incredibly supportive. Take all the time you need. We've got your back here. Meanwhile, Brandon swung between begging for reconciliation and lashing out. Baby, please, it was just a stupid prank. We can work this out, he pleaded one day. The next, it was, you're being ridiculous. My family's right. You're too sensitive for your own good. His family, however, was consistent in their attacks. Rumors spread through our social circle, labeling me as a gold digger and culturally incompatible. Aisha, bless her, stood by me like a fortress. Ignore those snakes. You're better off without them. She introduced me to her friend Mark, a divorce lawyer with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. What they did was emotional abuse, Pernilla, he said during our first meeting. We're going to make sure you come out of this okay. One sleepless night, I started writing, pouring my experiences into a blog post. To my shock, it went viral overnight. Comments flooded in. This happened to me too. You're so brave for speaking out. I thought I was alone in dealing with toxic in-laws. Suddenly, I had a platform. People were listening, sharing their own stories of family abuse and cultural insensitivity. Brandon's family, predictably, tried to discredit me. She's exaggerating for attention, Courtney posted on social media. It was just a harmless joke. But their attempts backfired. More people came forward, including Brandon's ex-girlfriend. They did similar things to me, she wrote. The emotional manipulation, the jokes that went too far, it's a pattern with them. With Aisha and Mark's help, I compiled these stories, building a case that went beyond just my experience. Pernilla, Mark said one evening, reviewing the evidence, I think it's time to go public with all of this. I hesitated. What if they sue me for defamation? Aisha squeezed my hand. Let them try. Truth is the best defense, and girl, you've got truth in spades. As I prepared my story for a major online publication, I felt a mix of fear and determination. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every person who'd ever been made to feel small by those who should have loved them. I took a deep breath and started typing. My name is Pernilla, and this is the story of how my American dream turned into a nightmare. Little did I know, hitting publish would set off a chain of events that would change not just my life, but the lives of many others. Brandon's family thought they could break me. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The moment I hit publish, my world exploded. Within hours, my story was everywhere. News sites, social media, talk shows. The public outrage was immediate and intense. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages of support. You're so brave, Pernilla. Thank you for speaking out. But the real shockwaves hit Brandon's family. His company, facing immense backlash, issued a statement: "We do not condone discriminatory behavior. Brandon is on indefinite leave while we investigate." Evelyn wasn't spared either. Parents at her school, horrified by her treatment of an immigrant daughter-in-law, demanded action. The school board called an emergency meeting. Courtney's perfect world crumbled too. Her fiance's family, disgusted by the revelations, withdrew their support. The wedding's off, Aisha read aloud from a gossip site, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. Guess karma is real after all. Meanwhile, my blog took off. It became a platform for others to share their stories of family abuse and cultural insensitivity. I was overwhelmed by the response. Pernilla, my agent, yes, I had an agent now, said, "We've got offers for book deals, speaking engagements. People want to hear your story." It was surreal. Me, the girl who once felt voiceless, now had the world's ear. Amidst the chaos, Brandon made one last attempt to reach out. He showed up at my new apartment looking haggard. "Pilla, please, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. Can we start over?" I looked at him, the man I once thought I loved, and felt nothing. "No, Brandon, we can't. Goodbye." As I closed the door on him, I felt a chapter of my life definitively end. But as one door closed, others opened. My graphic design career soared. Clients, impressed by my story and my work, flooded in. "I'm starting my own agency," I told Aisha over celebratory drinks, focusing on empowering immigrant-owned businesses. She raised her glass to new beginnings and sweet justice. A year flew by in a whirlwind of success. My book became a bestseller, my speaking engagements sold out, and my agency thrived. Then came news that made me pause. Brandon's family business, the cornerstone of their wealth and status, was struggling. Boycotts and bad press had taken their toll. "They're selling off assets," Mark informed me during a catch-up call. "Seems the mighty have fallen." I felt a twinge, not of sadness, but of closure. The final victory came unexpectedly. I was nominated for an advocacy award recognizing my work in immigrant rights and family abuse awareness. Standing on stage, accepting the award, I saw my journey flash before my eyes. The scared, lonely immigrant girl, the betrayed wife, and now this, a woman, strong, successful, and proud of her scars. "This award," I said into the microphone, "is for every person who's ever felt alone in a foreign land or unwelcome in their own family. You are seen, you are heard, and you are worthy of love and respect." As applause washed over me, I thought about Brandon's family. Their cruelty had been intended to break me, but instead, it had forged me into something stronger than they could have ever imagined. I left the stage, award in hand, ready to write the next chapter of my life, on my own terms, in my own words, with the strength of my experiences behind me. And that's the end of Pernilla's journey from victim to victor. Now, here's a question for you. Was Pernilla justified in publicly exposing Brandon's family, or did she go too far in her pursuit of justice? Where's the line between standing up for yourself and seeking revenge? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hey, I'm Linda. Thanks for joining me this morning. In our quiet suburban neighborhood, my days always start the same. I make breakfast for my son, Danny, before he heads off to school. My husband, Tom, is usually already on the phone by then, laughing too loudly at whatever crisis his sister, Rachel, is having. This particular morning, the sun hadn't even fully risen yet, but there was Tom, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. Rachel was ranting about her car breaking down again and how she needed help with that, plus more money for her boys' never-ending activities. "You know, I've got your back, Ra." "Let me see what I can do," Tom said, eager to please. I glanced at Danny, sitting quietly, eating his cereal as if he was trying to make himself invisible. It broke my heart to see him like that. When Tom finally hung up, I tried once more to bring up something that had been weighing on me. "You know, Danny's been really interested in that summer coding camp. It would be great if we could look into it for him." Tom barely looked up from his phone, scrolling through his messages. "Yeah, but you know how tight things are right now, with my mom needing help and Rachel's kids needing new laptops for school." I pressed on, "But what about Danny? His interests are just as important." Tom sighed, irritated. "Linda, we've been over this. My family needs me. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. It was Tom's mother, Eleanor, sweeping in with her usual air of superiority. She barely glanced at me before turning to Tom. "Darling, you won't believe the morning I've had," she began, but I had already tuned out. I focused instead on packing Danny's lunch, feeling the familiar hollow ache in my stomach. This was the same cycle every day. Eleanor and Rachel calling with their emergencies, and Tom rushing to their rescue. As I handed Danny his lunchbox and watched him leave for school, I couldn't help but wonder how much longer I could stand to watch my son be put second to his cousins. That night at dinner, the absence of Danny's future in our family discussions was glaring. Tom talked about how he'd helped Rachel with her car troubles and transferred money to cover his nephew's new laptops. "You should have seen how happy they were, Linda. I wish Danny understood the value of family like that," he said, completely missing the irony. My fork paused in midair. "Family includes Danny, Tom. When's the last time you did something just for him?" Tom frowned, clearly not expecting the challenge. "He's fine. He doesn't need constant hand-holding." In that moment, it hit me. My husband's family was his priority, and somehow, Danny and I had become background characters in the drama of their needs. After dinner, Tom retreated to his office, mumbling something about managing funds for his mother. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the uneaten food, the cold clarity of my situation settling in. I was alone in this, but I was determined to change it, for Danny and for myself. The next steps wouldn't be easy. But as I cleared the dishes, I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't let my son be forgotten. Not anymore. Later that evening, I logged into Danny's college fund account, something I always did with a sense of pride. But today my heart sank. The numbers didn't add up. Thousands of dollars were missing. Frantically, I double-checked, hoping I'd made a mistake. No such luck. I confronted Tom. "You gave his college fund to Rachel's kids. Babe, they needed it for school. It's a good investment in their future. And what about Danny? His future doesn't count." "Come on, it's not like that. He's smart. He'll figure something out. Family helps family." "That's just it, isn't it? Tigu, Danny isn't family enough to deserve his own savings." Tom shrugged, feeling my anger. "I'm doing my best here." "No, you're doing what's easiest. You're avoiding conflict with your mom and sister by sacrificing your own son." The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable. Tom's avoidance was answer enough. It was up to me now. Danny needed someone in his corner, and that someone was going to be me. A few days later, I found myself sitting in a local coffee shop, chatting with a mom whose son attended the same expensive private school as Rachel's kids. What started as casual talk about school fundraisers quickly turned into a strategic gathering of information. "So the school is pretty selective with scholarships, huh? Must be a hefty tuition." "Oh, absolutely. It's outrageous. But you know, some people get creative with funding." "Creative? How so?" She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "Well, you didn't hear it from me, but there's been talk," she said, lowering her voice. "Some parents funnel money through different accounts, even for scholarships. There's a lot of politics involved." Politics. That word echoed in my head. Tom's family helps family suddenly seemed like something much darker, part of a system built on manipulation and secrecy. I thanked her for the chat, my mind racing. That evening, I found myself at the school, posing as a prospective parent interested in scholarships. The admissions director, a sharply dressed woman with a polished smile, was more than willing to explain their prestigious program. "How do most families manage the tuition?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "We offer a variety of scholarships, some based on need, others on merit. And of course, there are private donations." "Private donations?" I probed. "Yes, some of our benefactors are very generous. It allows them to give back and support the community. It's all very discreet, of course." Discreet. There it was again, the secrecy. It was clear there was something beneath the polished surface, a system designed to control through financial dependency. This was about more than money. It was about influence. As I left with brochures, a new sense of purpose filled me. If Tom and his family were part of this game, they weren't just risking Danny's future. They were part of a machine manipulating far more than just college funds. On the drive home, the streetlights blurred as scenarios raced through my mind. How many others were out there, silenced by the weight of financial dependence? How deep did this go? When I arrived home, I found Tom on the couch, flipping through TV channels. He glanced at me, his gaze hollow. "Find out what you needed?" he asked, barely paying attention. "More than you know, Tom. More than you know." The pieces were starting to fall into place. Tomorrow I put my plan into action, for Danny, for everyone trapped in this web of family first. I wasn't just confronting Tom anymore. I was preparing to expose the rot at the core. The next morning, as the sun crept over the horizon, I was already on my way back to the school. I clutched a folder of carefully prepared questions, all under the guise of exploring scholarships for Danny. But my real mission was to meet with Paula, the financial advisor I'd been introduced to during my previous visit. "Good morning, Paula. Thanks for meeting with me again. I really appreciate it." "My pleasure, Linda. I know how stressful it can be figuring out school funding. What can I help you with today?" "Well," I began. Lowering my voice, I heard from a few parents about the possibility of managing funds creatively here. I was wondering. Paula leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It's not something we openly discuss, but yes, there are certain avenues we can explore, depending on your needs. I'm interested in scholarships, or maybe something a little more discreet. I'm not sure how it all works." She nodded and pulled a thick folder from her drawer. "Let's see what we can do for you. It's all about finding the right fit for your situation." As she flipped through the documents, I noticed names and figures, a trail of breadcrumbs. "So all these contributions go directly to the students?" "Mostly, yes. But in special cases, funds are managed through a third party. It could be a parent or an aunt or uncle, like a trust of sorts." "Exactly," she confirmed. "Bingo. And these trustees, could I see who they are, just for reference?" Paula hesitated, then pulled up a digital ledger on her screen. I scanned it quickly, and there it was, Rachel's name, not her son's, handling significant sums of money. "That's interesting," I murmured, filing the information away. As the meeting wrapped up, Paula mentioned something that made my pulse quicken. "You know, with all the scrutiny these days, we have to be careful. There's talk of an audit coming up, a thorough review of all accounts." "An audit?" I repeated, my heart racing. That sounds serious. "It's all routine, of course, but yes, it makes everyone a bit nervous." "Understandable. Thanks for the heads up." I left with a smile on my face and my mind buzzing. The next step was clear. That afternoon, I paid a casual visit to Eleanor's house. Tom's mother loved to brag about her children's supposed generosity, and today was no different. "Tom has been such a help to Rachel and the boys," Eleanor gushed. "He's got such a generous heart. Our family always takes care of each other." "I heard the school might be having an audit soon," I said, as innocently as I could. "It's great that everything's so transparent, isn't it?" Eleanor froze, her cup of tea halfway to her lips. "An audit? But why?" "Oh, I'm sure it's just routine. Audits are good for peace of mind, making sure every dollar goes where it's supposed to." I could see the worry creep into her expression, the seed of doubt firmly planted. "Well, yes. I suppose I'll mention it to Rachel. Probably for the best." As I left Eleanor's house, I could feel my plan coming together. The mention of an audit would spread through Tom's family like wildfire, and with Rachel and Tom's shady financial dealings, panic was inevitable. The next morning, I was in the kitchen when the phone rang. The caller ID showed the school's number. My heart skipped a beat. "Good morning, this is Paula from the school. We've started a preliminary review of our accounts, and while it seems there might have been some irregularities." "Really? That sounds concerning," I said, feigning surprise. "Yes, we've received a few anonymous tips. We're looking into everything very thoroughly." "That must be a huge hassle." "It is, but it's necessary. We take the integrity of our funding very seriously." I could almost hear the sweat forming on her brow through the phone. The trap was set, and now I just had to wait for it to spring. Hours later, as I was watering the plants, Tom burst through the door, his face flushed with a mix of anger and confusion. Eleanor followed closely behind, wringing her hands, her usual composure replaced by an unmistakable worry. "Linda, what have you done?" Tom roared, slamming the door behind him. "Me? What are you talking about?" "They're auditing the school. They're asking about the money I sent for Rachel's boys," Eleanor interjected, her voice cracking under the strain. "Money you never should have sent," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "You've embarrassed us all. If this gets out..." "Our reputation," Eleanor began, But I cut her off. Your reputation was built on lies, Eleanor. You stole from your own son. I was helping my family, Tom protested, his voice defensive but faltering. At what cost, Tom? Who's your family, really? He couldn't answer. His silence was a deafening admission of guilt. That evening, the fallout was palpable. Word spread quickly, as it always does in tight-knit communities. Neighbors whispered, their eyes darting toward our house, filled with a mixture of pity and judgment. The phone rang again. It was Rachel this time, her voice frantic. Tom, what have you done? They're asking about the scholarships, the money. It was for you and the kids, Rachel, Tom stammered, desperation creeping in. I did it all for you. You've put us all at risk, she snapped. The blame game began, phone calls flying back and forth, accusations ping-ponging between family members as the whole unit began to crumble under the weight of deceit. In the eye of the storm, I sat quietly. The fury I once felt was replaced by a cold, steady resolve. This was necessary. This was justice. By the time the next community meeting rolled around, the whispers had turned into full-fledged shunning. As Eleanor, Rachel, and Tom walked into the room, people visibly distanced themselves, moving away, leaving empty spaces around them. The isolation was stark and unmistakable. See what you've done, Eleanor hissed at Tom, her voice venomous as they sat down. I did what I thought was right, Tom muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. You thought wrong, I said, standing up. The room fell silent. We trusted you, Tom, but you and your family played us for fools, using your own son's future as collateral. But no more. This community does not tolerate deceit. As I sat back down, I could feel the weight of many eyes upon me. There was a shift in the room, a nod here, a whispered agreement there. The tide was turning. When I returned home, the sky was streaked with the fiery hues of sunset. The hardest part was over. Our once quiet town, uneventful and serene, now buzzed with the aftershocks of a scandal that had exposed the cracks in what was once thought to be a model family. Tom's actions had not only put his job at risk, but also dismantled the pedestal his family had built for themselves. The next day, as I walked into the cafe, I could feel the weight of many glances, this time not of pity but of respect. I sat down with the school principal and a few local benefactors. Their tone had shifted completely. We've been discussing Danny's situation, the principal began, and we all agree that a bright young man like him shouldn't suffer for his father's mistakes. Absolutely, one of the benefactors added. We're looking into a scholarship to cover his tuition for the coding camp he's interested in. It was a testament to the resilience and compassion of our community. Thank you, I said, warmth flooding through me. This means more than I can express. As I left the cafe, I felt lighter than I had in months. Neighbors waved, some stopping to offer their support and help. It was a stark contrast to the isolation now surrounding Tom, Eleanor, and Rachel. At home, I found Danny working on his homework. When I told him the news, his face lit up with the brightest smile I'd seen in a long time. Really, Mom? That's awesome. I won't let you down. I know you won't, honey. This is your time to shine. Later that day, I found Tom sitting alone in the park, a shadow of the man who once held his head so high. He didn't notice me at first, but when I approached, he looked up, surprise flashing briefly across his face before it was replaced by resignation. I just wanted to tell you, I said, Danny got the scholarship. He's going to that summer camp after all. That's good. He deserves it, Tom muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Tom, it didn't have to be this way. I know, he sighed. I just thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't see. That's just it, I said softly. You didn't see because you didn't want to. You chose not to see us, your own family. He nodded, the weight of his choices finally settling in. I guess I have a lot to think about. Yes, you do. I turned and left him to his thoughts. The road ahead for him would be long and filled with challenges of his own making. But for Danny and me, the future was looking brighter. We had weathered the storm, and with the support of those around us, we were ready to rebuild, stronger and wiser. As I walked back home, the sun set, casting long shadows on the path ahead. The cool evening air carried the promise of new beginnings and the sweet scent of justice, not served by courts, but by the unshakable moral compass of a community that stood up for what was right. For Danny and me, this wasn't just an ending. It was a new beginning, a testament to the strength of a mother's love and the resilience of those who choose to do what's right. Hi, I'm Olivia Martinez. I'm 28, living in San Francisco and working as a software engineer. Calling it my best life might be a bit of a stretch, but hey, I'm managing. My apartment's got a view of the fog, and I can afford the occasional overpriced avocado toast. So there's that. But trust me, getting here wasn't exactly smooth sailing. Picture this. I'm 8 years old, rocking pigtails, when my dad, Michael, decides family life isn't his scene anymore. He packs up and takes off with a woman young enough to be his daughter. "Sweetie, I'll always love you, but I need to find myself," he said. "Yeah, sure, Dad, find yourself in someone else's arms." Fast forward 4 years, and it's my mom's turn. Sarah meets Mr. Moneybags and suddenly craves a fresh start. "Olivia, darling, you'll understand when you're older. This is for the best," she said, kissing me goodbye. The best for who exactly? Thankfully, Grandma Elena stepped in, no questions asked. "Olivia, my sweet girl, we'll get through this together," she'd say, wrapping me in those warm, cinnamon-scented hugs that felt like home. Don't get me wrong, I'm doing okay. I've got a great job at Tech Corp, where I met my best friend Zoe. She was the one who finally convinced me to try therapy. "Girl, you've got more baggage than an airport carousel. Time to unpack that," she said over our third glass of wine one night. So there I was, pouring my heart out to Dr. Patterson every Tuesday. "Olivia, how does your parents' abandonment make you feel?" He'd ask. "How do you think it makes me feel, Doc?" Like I just won America's Next Top Abandonment Story. Just when I thought I was getting a grip, life threw another curveball. Grandma Elena, the only real parent I ever had, passed away. I was crushed, drowning in grief and memories of cinnamon hugs. Then came the surprise. She'd left me a fortune, serious money, the kind that would make even a Silicon Valley CEO do a double take. And wouldn't you know it, suddenly my phone was buzzing with calls from two people I never thought I'd hear from again. "Olivia, sweetheart, it's your father. I heard about Elena. I think it's time we reconnected." "Darling, it's your mother. I'm so sorry about your grandmother. We should talk." Well, look who decided to crawl out of the woodwork. I guess a fat inheritance check was enough to jog their memories about having a daughter. Buckle up, folks, things were about to get interesting. So there I was, standing outside a fancy restaurant, questioning my sanity for agreeing to meet with Michael. Yeah, I'm calling him Michael now. Dad is a title you earn, and this guy cashed in his chips a long time ago. "Olivia, oh sweetheart, you look so grown up," he said, walking toward me with a woman who looked like a desperate housewives extra on his arm and two mini Michaels trailing behind. "Hi, Michael," I replied, my voice flatter than week-old soda. "This is Vanessa, my wife," he said, beaming like he was introducing me to a shiny new car. "And these are the twins, Bryson and Kyler." I forced a smile. "Nice to meet you all." As we sat down, I couldn't help but notice Vanessa's designer everything. Her purse probably cost more than my monthly rent. "So Olivia," Michael started, his voice dripping with fake sincerity, "I heard about Elena. I'm so sorry. She was a good woman." "Yeah, she was the best," I replied, stabbing my salad like it had wronged me. "Funny how you remember her now." Michael had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I know I made mistakes, sweetie, but I'm here now. We're family." "Family?" I scoffed. "Is that what you call it?" Vanessa chimed in, her voice nauseatingly sweet. "Olivia, your father's been through a lot too. We should focus on healing." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Michael cleared his throat, leaning in. "So Elena's estate, has everything been settled smoothly?" And there it was, the real reason for this little family reunion. "It's been handled," I said curtly. The rest of lunch was a blur of awkward small talk and thinly veiled questions about my finances. The next day, it was Sarah's turn. She picked a ritzy country club. Of course she did. "Darling," she exclaimed, air kissing my cheeks. "This is Robert, my husband." Robert, a silver fox type in a tailored suit, shook my hand. "Pleasure to meet you, Olivia. Sarah's told me so much about you." "Funny, she hardly ever mentioned you to me," I quipped. Sarah's smile faltered for a second. "Well, let's sit, shall we? I've been dying to catch up." For the next hour, I was treated to a whirlwind tour of Sarah's charities, galas, and social connections. It was like listening to a Kardashian podcast on 2x speed. And then I said to the Duchess, "Darling, that tiara is simply to die for." Sarah giggled, taking a sip of her champagne. "Fascinating," I muttered, glancing at the clock and wondering if I could fake a medical emergency to make my escape. Robert cleared his throat, looking over at me. "You know, Olivia, times have been a bit tough lately. Some of my investments didn't pan out as expected." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh." Sarah jumped in with a too bright smile. "Nothing serious, of course. Just a little belt tightening. But you know, family is so important during times like these, don't you think?" I excused myself shortly after, my head spinning with thoughts of their not-so-subtle hints. Back at work, I spilled everything to Zoe over coffee. "They're totally after your money," Zoe said, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You need to watch your back." "You think?" I sighed. "What should I do?" Zoe's eyes gleamed with a mischievous light. "I know a guy, a private investigator. He could dig up some dirt on your folks." I hesitated, then nodded. "Do it." For the next week, my phone lit up with messages from Michael and Sarah. "Family dinner. Let's go shopping. We have so much to catch up on." I was ignoring yet another text when I overheard a conversation in the break room that made my blood run cold. "Yeah, Martinez, the quiet one, right? Word is her grandma left her millions." I froze, my coffee mud halfway to my lips. How did they know about my inheritance? And if they knew, who else did? As I walked back to my desk, my phone pinged again. Another message from Sarah. "Darling, we simply must discuss the family estate. It's what Alina would have wanted." I clenched my fists, a cold anger settling in my gut. These vultures thought they could swoop in and take what was mine. They had another thing coming. It was time to find out what skeletons were hiding in their designer closets. Jake, the private investigator Zoe had recommended, didn't waste any time. Within a week, he dropped a bombshell that made my head spin. "Your dad's business? It's a house of cards," Jake said, sliding a file across my kitchen table. "He's in deep with some nasty loan sharks. We're talking break your kneecaps kind of guys." I flipped through the pages, my stomach twisting. "And my mom?" Jake grimaced. "Her husband, Robert, has been cooking the books at his company. They're one audit away from total bankruptcy." It was like a punch to the gut. I knew they were after my money, but this level of desperation was staggering. "There's more," Jake continued. "Someone's been poking around your work email, accessing files about your inheritance." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What? How?" Jake shrugged. "Inside job, maybe. Any coworkers acting suspicious?" My mind raced, recalling the break room gossip and the sudden interest from people who'd never given me the time of day before. It all started to make sense. "I've got an idea," I set, a plan forming in my mind. "Can you set up a meeting with a financial advisor?" "A fake one." Jake grinned. "Now you're thinking. I know just the guy." The next day, I invited both Michael and Sarah to separate meetings with my financial advisor to discuss my inheritance. They both jumped at the chance like sharks smelling blood. When they arrived at the office, the looks on their faces were priceless. Michael turned pale, while Sarah's Botox forehead actually managed to wrinkle in surprise. "What's going on here?" Michael demanded. I smiled sweetly. "Oh, I just thought we could all chat about my inheritance together. Isn't that what family does?" For the next hour, I laid out everything Jake had uncovered. Michael's failing business, Sarah and Robert's embezzlement, and the hacking of my work email. With each revelation, they grew more desperate, turning on each other like rabid dogs. "You told me you needed the money for the boys' college fund." Sarah shrieked at Michael. "Oh, please, like you're any better," Michael shot back. "Trying to frame your own daughter for corporate espionage." Michael shot back, and my jaw dropped. "Sarah, at least have the decency to look ashamed. It wasn't supposed to go that far. We just needed access to your files," she stammered. I stood up, shaking with rage. "Get out, both of you, and don't ever contact me again." As they left, tails between their legs, I caught a glimpse of Jake in the corner, giving me a thumbs up. The entire confrontation had been recorded. The fallout was swift and brutal. My coworker Tim from accounting confessed to being bribed by Sarah for information about my finances. A few days later, Michael showed up at my apartment with the twins, trying to guilt me into helping him. "Think of your brothers, Olivia. They need you," he pleaded. I slammed the door in his face. They needed a father who stuck around, not a deadbeat chasing money. Sarah's attempt to frame me for corporate espionage was the last straw. I needed a plan, and I needed it fast. We've got them by the balls, Zoe said as we pored over the evidence in my living room. Now we just need to squeeze. I nodded, cold determination settling over me. Let's end this once and for all. I wish I could say I felt bad about what I was about to do, but after everything they put me through, this was justice, pure and simple. First up, Robert's embezzlement. I made an anonymous tip to the SEC, and they swarmed his office faster than you can say insider trading. Sarah, darling, I'm afraid there's been a terrible mistake. I overheard Robert shouting into his phone outside the SEC building. The only mistake was thinking they could mess with me and get away with it. As for Michael, well, let's just say his loan shark buddies got an interesting update on his whereabouts. Last I heard, he was spotted boarding a bus to Mexico, looking over his shoulder every 5 seconds. But the piece de resistance, that recorded confession, I handed it over to my company's legal team, and suddenly, all those whispers about corporate espionage dried up real quick. Olivia, we owe you one apology, my boss said, looking sheepish. And a substantial raise if you're interested. I smiled, but my mind was already elsewhere. It was time for a change. Actually, I said, I think I'm ready for a new challenge. So was all in when I pitched her my idea, our own tech company. Girl, you're speaking my language. We used part of my inheritance to set up shop. But that wasn't all. Grandma Alina's house. I turned it into a shelter for kids who'd been abandoned or abused. It felt right, like she was still helping people even after she was gone. This place is going to change lives, Zoe said as we stood outside the newly renovated shelter. I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. It already has. Standing by the window of my new office overlooking the San Francisco skyline, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The past was behind me. The future was mine for the taking. The story's over, but I've got a question for you. If you were in my shoes, would you have exposed your parents' schemes or given them another chance? Family is complicated, right? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hi, I'm Olivia Evans. I'm 28, and after years of clawing my way up, I've finally made it as a marketing executive. Sounds great, right? Well, it is, except for one thing, my family. Or more specifically, my dad, Richard Evans. He's a big-shot businessman who spent my entire life making me feel like I'll never measure up. Growing up, everything was about Mark, my cousin. You'd think he was the second coming of Christ, the way my dad talks about him. I swear, if my dad could have traded me for him, he wouldn't have hesitated. Once, when I was 10, I won first place at a school science fair. I couldn't wait to show my dad, so I ran into his office, clutching my trophy. And what did he say? That's nice, sweetie. But did you hear Mark made varsity as a freshman? Seriously? It was always like that. Mark was the golden child, and I was just there. The only person who ever truly understood me was my mom. She was my rock, always ready with a hug or words of encouragement. But when she passed away when I was 18, my world shattered. Dad buried himself in work, leaving me to grieve alone. And now here I am, packing for the annual family reunion at my dad's fancy estate. I'm dreading it. My phone buzzes. It's Aunt Susan, Dad's sister. Hey, sweetie. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. You're coming, right? I sigh and type back, wouldn't miss it, before tossing my phone onto the bed. Why do I put myself through this every year? I mutter, stuffing clothes into my suitcase. The next day, I pull up to my dad's mansion, my stomach in knots. Uncle Tom's car is already in the driveway. Great. Looks like the golden boy is already here. I plaster on my best fake smile as I ring the doorbell. Aunt Susan opens it, beaming. Olivia, look at you, more beautiful every time I see you. I force a laugh. Thanks, Aunt Susan, you look great too. She ushers me inside, chattering about how everyone's out back. Your father's firing up the grill. Oh, and Mark brought his new girlfriend. She's just lovely. Of course he did. I bet Dad's already planning their wedding. I take a deep breath and step onto the patio, forcing another smile. My dad's at the grill, and there's Mark, looking smug as ever. Well, Dad slurs. Look who finally decided to grace us with her presence. Traffic was awful, I lie, trying to keep things civil. How's everyone doing? Mark jumps in, practically glowing. Oh, we're great. I was just telling Uncle Rick about my new business venture. It's going to be huge. I nod, barely listening as he drones on about his latest get-rich-quick scheme, while everyone hangs on his every word. Aunt Susan appears at my side, handing me a glass of wine. You look like you could use this, she says. Thanks, I mutter, taking a big sip. The evening drags on, and we all sit around the large table on the patio. Everyone's laughing at my dad's increasingly inappropriate jokes, but I feel the tension simmering under my skin. Suddenly, Dad stands up, swaying slightly. I'd like to make a toast, he announces, his voice booming, to my nephew Mark, the son I never had. A cheer erupts from the table, but I can feel my face burning with embarrassment and anger. Mark, my boy, Dad continues, you've made me proud. This new business venture is exactly what this family needs. Unlike some people, his eyes flick to me for just a second before he looks away. I grip my wine glass so tightly my knuckles turn white. But nothing could have prepared me for what came next. You know, my father slurred, swaying slightly. I always thought having kids would be great, but sometimes mistakes happen. The table went silent. Every pair of eyes turned toward me. Dad, I whispered, barely able to get the words out. What are you saying? He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that cut through the quiet. Oh, come on, Olivia. You know you were never part of the plan. Your mother insisted on keeping you, but me? I knew you'd never live up to the Evans name. The silence was suffocating. I stood so abruptly that my chair toppled over, the noise echoing through the stillness. Excuse me, I choked out, rushing inside, barely able to hold back the tears. I found myself in my father's study, tears streaming down my face. How could he say something like that, especially in front of everyone? The door creaked open behind me. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. What do you want? I spat. To explain, my father said, his voice strangely calm. I turned to face him, fury and pain warring inside me. Explain what? That I'm not good enough for this family. He sighed, settling into his leather chair as if we were having a casual conversation. It's not just about that. I've decided to make some changes to my will. Mark has shown real promise, and? You're giving him my inheritance? I cut him off, my voice full of disbelief. He didn't flinch. The majority of it, yes. It's what's best for the family business. I stared at him, incredulous. So that's it. You're just writing me off completely. Olivia, don't be dramatic, he said, waving a hand. You'll still get something. Just not as much as we originally discussed. I shook with anger, tears blurring my vision. You know what? Keep it. Keep all of it. I don't want anything from you. Don't be hasty. No, I interrupted, my voice trembling with rage. I'm done. Done with you, with this family, with everything. You want Mark as your heir? Fine, but don't expect to ever hear from me again. I stormed out, ignoring the concerned glances from relatives as I grabbed my purse and keys. As I reached my car, I heard Aunt Susan calling after me. Olivia, wait, where are you going? I turned to face her, my voice cold and cutting. Ask your brother. I'm sure he'll be thrilled to tell you all about his mistake. Without another word, I got in my car and drove away, tears spilling down my cheeks as the estate disappeared in my rearview mirror. As I sped away, I made a silent vow. This would be the last time Richard Evans, or any of them, would hurt me. I was cutting ties with my toxic family for good. Later, I stumbled into my apartment, emotionally drained. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was Zoe, my best friend. Girl, where are you? I thought we were grabbing drinks tonight. Zoe, you won't believe the night I've had. I said, my voice breaking as I fought back the tears. I'm coming over. Don't move. 30 minutes later, Zoe was at my door with a bottle of wine and a sympathetic ear. I told her everything. Dad's drunken speech, the mistake comment, the bombshell about the inheritance. That rat bastard, Zoe hissed, pouring more wine. Liv, you can't let him get away with this. What am I supposed to do? It's his money. Zoe's eyes lit up. What if there's more to the story? Your mom always seemed like she was protecting you from something. I frowned. What do you mean? Remember how weird she'd get whenever your dad's business came up? Maybe there's dirt you don't know about. The idea took root. Mom's old letters were still in the attic. Maybe they held answers. The next morning, nursing a wine hangover, I climbed into the attic. Dust-covered boxes were scattered everywhere. After an hour of searching, I found a small locked box labeled Elizabeth's personal. Inside were dozens of letters, one standing out from the rest. My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, I'm gone. There's so much I wanted to tell you about your father, about our family, things I was too afraid to say. Know that I've left something for you, something your father doesn't know about. It's not much, but it's yours. Look for the key where the sun always shines. All my love, Mom. My hands shook as I read the letter. What did she mean? What was Dad hiding? I needed help. That's how I found myself in a dingy office, face to face with Jake, a private investigator. He had a 5 o'clock shadow and eyes that had seen too much. So, he said, leaning back in his creaky chair, you want me to dig up dirt on your old man. I needed to know the truth about my father, the business, everything. Jake nodded slowly. All right, Miss Evans. But I warn you, sometimes the truth ain't pretty. A week later, Jake called. You better come down here. You're going to want to see this for yourself. I rushed to his office, my heart pounding. Jake had files spread across his desk. Your daddy's been a busy boy, he said, pointing to the papers. Offshore accounts, shell companies, the works. And get this, your cousin Mark, he's in it up to his eyeballs too. I flipped through the documents, my stomach turning. Fraud, embezzlement, insider trading, it was all there, laid out in black and white. There's more, Jake continued. Your mom, she knew. That's why she set up a separate account for you. It's not much compared to your dad's fortune, but it's clean. And it's all yours. I sat there stunned. Mom had known all along. She tried to protect me the only way she could. What do I do now? I asked, feeling completely overwhelmed. Jake leaned forward, his gaze steady. That's up to you, Miss Evans. But if I were you, I'd make him pay. As I left Jake's office, my mind was spinning. I had the truth now, but what was I going to do with it? One thing was certain, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Dad and Mark thought they could push me aside. They had no idea what was coming. And now, here I am, standing outside my father's office. My heart is pounding like a jackhammer, and the USB drive in my hand feels impossibly heavy. It's showtime. I stride in, channeling all the confidence I've faked over the years. Dad and Mark look up, their surprise quickly shifting to annoyance. What's the meaning of this, Olivia? Dad barks. I smirk. Oh, just thought I'd drop by for a little family meeting. You know, to discuss offshore accounts, fraud, the usual Evans family business. Their faces, priceless. I wish I had a camera. You can't prove anything, Mark sputters, his confidence shaken. Actually, cousin dearest, I can. And I will, unless you're willing to make a deal. Long story short, I walked out of there with my rightful share of the company and a very legally binding agreement. Turns out, I'm pretty good at hostile takeovers. So what's next for Olivia Evans? Who knows? But one thing's for sure, I'm done living in anyone's shadow. This is my story now, and I'm just getting started. The story of Olivia Evans has come to an end. Now we want to hear from you. What would you do if you discovered your family's darkest secrets? Would you expose them, even if it meant destroying your family's reputation? Or would you stay quiet to protect the people you love? How far would you go for justice? Is revenge ever truly worth it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in Olivia's shoes? Do you think she made the right choice? Have you ever had to cut ties with toxic family members? How did it impact your life? Where do you draw the line between family loyalty and personal integrity? Hey everyone, I'm Sarah, a 25-year-old graphic designer hustling to make it in the bustling city of Chicago. My apartment may be small, but it's mine, and I've been saving up for something big, a top-tier laptop that'll take my freelance work to the next level. Now, about my family. Well, it's complicated, especially with my older sister, Emma. She's been a thorn in my side since we were kids, always trying to outshine me, always envious. I remember once when I won a school art contest. Instead of congratulating me, Emma just rolled her eyes and said, "Big deal, anyone can scribble on paper." That's what I had to deal with growing up. My mom, completely oblivious, would say, "Hey Sarah, why don't you show Emma your drawing?" Emma would sneer, "Yeah, let's see what the little artist can do." And don't even get me started on my parents, Tom and Linda. They might as well have had an Emma fan club sign on the door. It was always Emma this, Emma that, while I was busting my butt and feeling invisible. Despite all that, I kept grinding. I earned a scholarship to art school while Emma was still figuring out what she wanted to do. When I told her the news, she snarked, "They must be desperate for students." I didn't let it get to me, though. Fast forward to now, I have finally saved enough for the laptop of my dreams. A sleek $3,000 MacBook Pro packed with all the power I need for my design work. The day I hit the order button, I felt like I was floating. "You sure about this?" My best friend Mike asked. "This is my moment, Mike. I've earned it," I told him. On my birthday, my family came over for a small celebration. Mom and Dad brought a cake, and even Emma showed up. "Happy birthday, sis," she said, handing me an envelope with a $100 gift card inside, grinning like she'd given me the world. "Wow, thanks, Emma," I said, keeping it polite. Then, there was a knock at the door. My heart raced. I knew what it was. I rushed over and came back with a large box, grinning ear to ear. "My new laptop," I announced, tearing into it like a kid on Christmas. It was everything I dreamed of. "Isn't it beautiful?" I asked, holding it up for everyone to see. But Emma's face darkened. "How much did that thing cost?" she asked, her voice tight. "About $3,000, I admitted. Her eyes widened. $3,000? Who spends that much on a laptop? It's for my work, Emma. I've been saving. "Oh right, your work," she interrupted, making air quotes. "Because Little Miss Perfect needs the fanciest toys to doodle on, right?" "It's not doodling, Emma. It's graphic design. It's my career." The tension was thick. Mom and Dad exchanged worried glances, clearly uncomfortable. As the night dragged on, Emma kept making snide comments, each sharper than the last. She was downing wine like water. "Must be nice to waste money like that," she slurred. "Some of us actually work for a living, you know." "I do work, Emma. Really hard. Please, sitting around all day on your fancy computer isn't work." I was about to snap, but Mom intervened. "Girls, it's Sarah's birthday. Let's try to get along." Finally, as the night wound down, I walked Mom and Dad to the door. "Thanks for coming and for the cake," I said. "Of course, sweetie. Happy birthday," Mom said, giving me a hug. All that was left was to say goodbye to Emma and survive the rest of this nightmare birthday. But when I turned around, Emma wasn't in the living room anymore. I heard a noise coming from my home office. "Emma," I called out, walking toward the sound. What was she doing? I froze in the doorway, unable to believe my eyes. There was Emma, stumbling drunk, my toolbox open at her feet and a hammer in her hand. On my desk sat my brand new laptop, or what was left of it. "Emma, what are you doing?" I screamed. She turned to me, her eyes wild and unfocused. "Fed up," she muttered, raising the hammer one last time. With a sickening crunch, she brought it down on the remains of my laptop. "Now we're even," she shrieked, dropping the hammer with a thud. I stood there, paralyzed, staring at the wreckage of my dreams scattered across the desk. This wasn't just a laptop. It was years of hard work, savings, and hope, gone in an instant of drunken jealousy. As the reality sank in, a surge of emotions hit me all at once: rage, heartbreak, and a determination that this would be the last time Emma ever hurt me. My hands shook as I dialed 911, my voice trembling as I tried to explain what happened. But by the time I got through to someone, Emma had already stumbled out of my apartment. The cops listened, but without her there, it felt pointless. "We'll file a report, ma'am." But without the suspect present, I knew what that meant. Fat chance of anything coming from this. But I wasn't going to give up that easily. Next, I called my parents, hoping they'd back me up. "Mom, Dad, you need to tell the police what Emma did. You were here, you saw how she was acting." There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Dad spoke up. "Honey, Emma called us earlier. She said she left your party around 8 p.m. We can't lie to the police." My blood ran cold. "What? No, that's not true. She was here. She smashed my laptop. You know how she gets when she drinks." When I turned around, Mom chimed in. "Now, Sarah, I think you might be exaggerating. Emma would never do something like that. Maybe you had a little too much to drink yourself." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own parents, once again, choosing Emma's lies over my truth. "Fine," I said, my voice ice cold. "Believe what you want." I hung up the phone and sank to the floor, surrounded by the shattered pieces of my dreams. But as I sat there, something inside me hardened. I was done being Emma's punching bag, done with my family's willful blindness. It was time to expose Emma for who she really was. I called my best friend, Mike. If anyone could help me pull this off, it was him. "Mike, I need your help. It's about Emma." "What did she do this time?" he asked. I filled him in on everything. When I finished, Mike let out a low whistle. "Damn, Sarah, that's messed up. What do you want to do about it?" "I want to catch her, expose her, make sure everyone sees her for the lying, manipulative person she really is." "All right, I'm in. What's the plan?" We spent hours brainstorming. Mike's tech skills were going to be crucial. "First things first," he said, "we need to set up some surveillance in your place. Hidden cameras, mics, the works. Next time Emma comes over, we'll catch everything." "Good idea. What else?" "We'll create a fake social media account to keep tabs on her. I can also do some digging into her digital footprint, maybe even her financials. People like Emma usually have skeletons in their closets." Meanwhile, I added, "I'll play nice, act like I've forgiven her and the family. Get close again." "You sure you can pull that off?" Mike asked, concerned. "I have been playing nice my whole life, Mike. I can do it a little longer." Over the next few weeks, we put our plan into action. Mike helped me install tiny cameras and mics around my apartment, hidden in picture frames and potted plants. We created a fake Instagram account, Chicago Party Girl, and got Emma to accept the friend request. I reached out to her, playing the forgiving sister. "Hey, Em, I've been thinking. I'm sorry about how things went down on my birthday. Can we talk?" Her response was quick. "Sure, sis. I'm glad you've come to your senses. How about dinner next week?" I had to stop myself from throwing my phone. Instead, I typed back, "Sounds great. Can't wait." Meanwhile, Mike was working his magic behind the scenes. One night, he called me, his voice excited. "Sarah, you're not going to believe this. I think I found something big. Really big." "What is it?" I asked, my heart racing. "I can't say for sure yet, but it looks like Emma might be embezzling from her company. I need to dig deeper, but the numbers don't add up." I felt a mix of shock and vindication. This was it. This was how we were going to bring Emma down. As I prepared for our dinner, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness. How had it come to this? My own sister, my own family, but I pushed those feelings aside. Emma had made her choices, and now it was time for her to face the consequences. When Emma arrived at my place, I played the part of the forgiving sister. As she walked in, I felt the hidden cameras watching, ready to capture everything. "Thanks for coming, Em. I really want us to move past this." "Of course, sis. Water under the bridge, right?" We chatted, and I carefully steered the conversation toward my work. "You know, I've been getting some great freelance gigs lately. Clients love my work." Emma's jaw tightened, her eyes narrowing. "Oh, aren't you special?" she sneered. "Always the golden child." I pushed harder. "Remember my birthday? That laptop was going to take my career to the next level." Emma snapped. "You and your stupid laptop. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? Well, I showed you. I smashed that thing to pieces, and I'd do it again." Bingo. I had her confession on camera. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Mike. "It's done." His text read. We had anonymously tipped off Emma's workplace and the police about her embezzlement. Within days, her world imploded. She lost her job, faced criminal charges, and for the first time, our parents finally saw her true colors. The video of her confession went viral, ruining what was left of her reputation. A week later, I watched from my window as Emma moved out of her fancy apartment. Jobless and alone, I felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. My sister's toxicity had finally caught up with her. I turned back to my new laptop, ready to move forward with my life and career. For the first time in years, I felt free from Emma's shadow. It was time to focus on my own path, leaving the pain and resentment behind. As I opened up a new design project, I couldn't help but smile. This was my fresh start, my chance to shine without Emma's constant attempts to dim my light. But here's a question for you. If you were in my shoes, would you have exposed Emma's crimes or tried to help her change? Was justice served, or did I go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hi, I'm Julia. Now, let me take you back to that sunny Saturday, a day that started like any other but ended up changing everything. As I pulled into my brother Ethan's driveway, a mix of excitement and nerves bubbled up inside me. It had been a while since the whole family gathered. and I was eager to see everyone, especially since I'd just landed my new job as a manager at a top marketing firm. I had come straight from picking up some last-minute supplies, my old 2002 blue sedan packed with bags of chips and homemade salsa. The car wasn't much to look at, but it was mine, paid off and reliable. As I stepped out, Ethan was the first to greet me. "Hey Jules, we were starting to think you bailed on us." "Never," I laughed, handing him the snacks. Traffic was a nightmare. As we walked into the backyard, the smell of grilled burgers filled the air. There was Vanessa, Ethan's wife, looking like she'd just stepped out of a magazine in her summer dress and designer sunglasses. My parents waved from beside the grill, and my younger siblings, Mike and Sarah, were setting up the outdoor games. Finally, the guest of honor arrives. Vanessa called out, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. She glanced at my car parked next to their brand new SUV. "Couldn't you park that relic around the block, Jules? It's killing my view." A few of my cousins chuckled, and I tried to brush it off with a smile. "Well, it gets me from A to B." "Oh honey," Vanessa sighed, sipping her cocktail. "You really should treat yourself. You're a manager now, aren't you? Act like it." I started to respond, but Vanessa had already moved on, gathering people for a game. I stood there, her words steaming. Ethan caught my eye, his face apologetic. He shrugged, mouthing, "Don't let her get to you." The afternoon wore on with the usual barbecue fun. I mingled, played games, and tried to keep the mood light, but Vanessa's words nagged at me. It wasn't just about the car, it was her subtle way of reminding me where I stood in her world. Later, as we all sat down to eat, the conversation buzzed with updates on everyone's lives. I shared the news about my new job, earning congratulations and questions from family members. Vanessa, meanwhile, seemed oblivious to the bombshell I was about to drop. "So, Julia," she said with a smirk, "must be a big step up from your old gig, huh? Hopefully, they're paying you enough to get rid of that car soon." She nudged Ethan, grinning. Before I could reply, my mom spoke up. "We're all proud of Julia. She's worked hard for this." The meal continued, filled with laughter and stories, but the tension simmered beneath the surface. As the sun set and people started saying their goodbyes, I helped clean up, the weight of Vanessa's arrogance and the looming reality of Monday morning filling my thoughts. Little did she know, the tables were about to turn. Walking into the sleek glass building on Monday, my stomach flipped with nerves. First days are always nerve-wracking, but this wasn't just any first day. I was stepping into a managerial role at one of the most prestigious marketing firms in the city. The receptionist greeted me with a bright smile as I passed through the lobby. "Good morning, Julia. They're ready for you upstairs." Stepping out of the elevator, I was met with a round of applause from my new team. Mr. Carter, the director, shook my hand warmly. "Everyone, let's officially welcome Julia as your new project manager." The room buzzed with cheers and polite clapping. Scanning the faces, my eyes landed on Vanessa. Her applause was slow, her smile tight. She hadn't known I was going to be her boss until this very moment. "Let's catch up after this, Julia," Vanessa said, her tone a mixture of surprise and forced cheerfulness. "Sure, let's do that," I replied calmly, keeping my voice professional, masking the swirl of emotions inside. As the team settled in, I took my place at the head of the conference table and outlined the morning's agenda. Vanessa's eyes remained glued to her notepad, scribbling furiously, avoiding my gaze. When the meeting wrapped up, the team dispersed, but Vanessa lingered, her steps hesitant. "Julia, about the barbecue. I hope there are no hard feelings," she said softly, her voice a stark contrast to her usual boldness. "Vanessa, let's keep our focus on work. Personal matters stay outside these walls," I replied, offering her a polite but distant smile. "Of course, you're right," she nodded, her eyes darting away, unable to fully mask her unease. Over the next few days, I dove deep into project files and performance reports. Vanessa's work stood out, though not for good reasons. There were discrepancies in her project timelines and budget allocations that didn't add up. During our one-on-one meetings, I addressed them head-on. "Vanessa, I've noticed some discrepancies in the Smith account. Can you walk me through your process here?" "Sure, it's probably just minor oversights. You know how it goes with deadlines and all," she laughed nervously, fidgeting with her pen. "Minor or not, accuracy is crucial. We can't afford these slips, especially with high-profile clients. Let's go over this together, shall we?" My tone was firm, leaving no room for excuses. Yes, absolutely, she replied, her fingers trembling slightly as she tapped on her keyboard. It quickly became clear that Vanessa had been cutting corners, her work just barely skimming acceptable standards. Each session with her revealed more gaps, and I documented everything meticulously, preparing for the inevitable. Vanessa, based on these reviews, I see a pattern of oversight that we need to correct immediately, I stated during our next meeting, laying out the discrepancies. I understand, Julia. I'll tighten things up. Thanks for pointing these out, she replied, her voice a mix of gratitude and discomfort. I nodded. Let's ensure it doesn't continue. Our clients and our team rely on our diligence. As she left my office, the weight of her situation seemed to settle on her shoulders. For me, it was about protecting the integrity of our work, but I couldn't deny the faintest twinge of satisfaction knowing that in its own way, justice was being served. The following Monday, I arrived early, feeling the heightened stakes, not just for me, but for Vanessa too. I could sense the pressure on her as she approached my office, clutching her oversized designer bag and a stack of files, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Got a minute? I beckoned her in, my tone purposeful. Sure thing, she replied, smoothing her blouse as she sat down. I'm putting you in charge of the Henderson project. It's small but crucial. Think of this as an opportunity to really showcase your skills. Explained, laying out the project details in front of her. Vanessa's eyes flicked up, a mix of nervousness and excitement dancing in them. Really? I mean, thanks, Julia. I won't let you down. I nodded, watching her closely. I'll be guiding you through it, but I want to see what you can do when you're leading. As the days rolled on, I kept a close watch on Vanessa's handling of the project. Meetings were frequent, and I made sure every decision and approval was documented. Her initial enthusiasm began to wane as the pressure mounted. Vanessa, during our last review, you mentioned outsourcing some of the graphics work. Have you vetted the vendor properly? I asked her in one of our strategy sessions. Oh yeah, they're good. I think they'll be fine, she replied, a bit too hastily. It's crucial they're more than just fine. Can you share the vetting process you followed? I pressed, my voice firm, knowing that any misstep now would be on record. She fumbled through her files, her facade of confidence slipping. I'll get that info to you by EOD. Just didn't bring the paperwork with me right now. Days turned into weeks, and the project's deadline loomed. We were in a team meeting, and it was Vanessa's turn to present her progress. The room was full, the air thick with anticipation. Vanessa stood, report in hand, but her usual poise was gone. All right, let's see. For the marketing strategy, we're planning to. She stumbled over her words, her report lacking the depth and clarity expected. From the corner, Mr. Carter raised his eyebrows and gave me a slight nod. This was the moment. As she floundered, I interjected. Vanessa, could you elaborate on how the budget was allocated? There seemed to be some discrepancies between your report and the initial estimates. Her face flushed. Well, I had to make some last-minute changes. The costs, they kind of got away from me. I see. It's crucial we stick to the planned budgets, especially with new clients, I remarked, turning to the team. It's important we all learn from this. The meeting ended with the team shuffling out, murmurs of concern about the project status filling the room. Vanessa lingered, her defeat almost palpable. Julia, I tried to handle it. I don't know what went wrong, she confessed, her voice low. Managing projects is about oversight and adaptability, Vanessa. Let's discuss how we can rectify this, I said, my tone firm but not unkind. This moment wasn't just about her failure, it was about setting a standard for everyone. She nodded, agreeing to meet later. I documented everything meticulously. Her mismanagement was now evident to everyone, and though I took no pleasure in her struggle, I knew it was necessary to safeguard the company and its clients. This was justice served, not out of vengeance, but out of necessity. The day after the disastrous meeting, the office was eerily quiet as I made my way to my desk. The whispers had already begun, trailing behind me like a shadow. Vanessa, pacing by the water cooler, intercepted me before I could even sit down. This was a setup, wasn't it? You've been out to get me from the start, she accused, her voice tense, strained with anger and confusion. I gave you an opportunity, Vanessa. The outcome was in your hands, not mine, I responded, calm and measured against her rising pitch. But you watched me fail. You could have helped more, guided me. Vanessa's voice cracked, her desperation clear in her eyes. Helping is one thing, but doing your job for you is another, I replied calmly. We all have to meet our standards, and unfortunately, you didn't meet yours. She scoffed, throwing her hands up. So that's it, huh? You're just going to watch me go down? I document everyone's performance, Vanessa. It's not personal. It's my job. Later that afternoon, Mr. Carter called us both into his office. The atmosphere was thick, almost suffocating, as Vanessa and I sat across from him. He laid out the papers I had compiled, her mismanaged budgets, unvetted vendors, and timeline discrepancies. After reviewing the evidence and considering Julia's observations, we decided it's best for the company that we part ways with you, Vanessa, Mr. Carter said. Her face went pale, her previous fire extinguished by the weight of the decision. I understand, was all she could manage, her voice barely a whisper. News of Vanessa's termination spread quickly. At the next family gathering, the mood was mixed. My brother Ethan approached me as I poured myself a cup of coffee. I know it's been rough, Jules. Are you okay? His concern was genuine, and I was touched. I did what was necessary, Ethan. It wasn't about revenge. It was about integrity. He nodded, clapping a hand on my shoulder. I know, sis, and I think, deep down, everyone else knows too. Our parents, ever supportive, made no comment on Vanessa's absence, choosing instead to focus on the family being together. As the night wore on, the heaviness lifted somewhat, laughter and chatter filling the space between us. Driving home later, the quiet hum of my reliable old car gave me a moment to reflect. Sitting in the driver's seat, watching the streetlights blur past, I thought about everything that had happened. My job demanded tough choices, ones that affected not just me but the people around me. While I never sought to hurt Vanessa personally, my role was clear: to uphold a standard. Ensuring justice at work meant making hard decisions even if they impacted family. And though the weight of those decisions was heavy, I drove on, knowing I had done my job with fairness and integrity. The road ahead was clear, guided by the principles I valued most. So, what do you think? Was Julia right in how she handled Vanessa's situation, strictly upholding her professional duties? Or could she have been more supportive despite their past issues? Share your thoughts in the comments below. My name's Harper. I'm 35, thriving in my marketing career, and for a while, I thought I had life all figured out. Then James came along, sweeping me off my feet. Before I knew it, we were walking down the aisle, saying, I do. Crazy, right? But here's the twist. James came with a 12-year-old son, Tyler. Moving in with them felt like stepping into a minefield. I tried everything to win Tyler over. Hey buddy, I made your favorite lasagna, I'd say, hoping for a smile. Instead, I'd get an eye roll and a mumbled, whatever. It was like talking to a brick wall. One night, I offered to help Tyler with his math homework. Let's tackle these fractions together, I suggested. He slammed the book shut and snapped. I don't need your help. You're not my mom. I turned to James, expecting him to step in. He just shrugged. Give him time. But time didn't fix things. Tyler's attitude only worsened. He ignored curfew, left messes everywhere, and constantly talked back. Whenever I tried to set boundaries, James would undercut me. Harper, don't be so hard on him, he'd say. It was like I was losing my mind. Was I the problem? I needed to vent, so I called my best friend, Olivia. Girl, you won't believe what Tyler did today. I started. Spill the tea, she said, and I did. About Tyler's disrespect, James's lack of support, the whole mess. Olivia listened, then said, Harper, honey, these are some serious red flags. Are you sure you're not in over your head? I don't know, Liv. I love James, but this is so rough. I get it, she said, but don't lose yourself trying to fix it. You matter too. Her words stuck with me, but I wasn't ready to give up. I threw myself into work, hoping things would smooth out at home. Big mistake. A few weeks later, my boss, Mr. Peterson, called me into his office. Harper, is everything okay? Your last few presentations have been off. I forced a smile. Everything's fine, sir. Just a little stressed, but I'll get back on track. But as I left, I knew I wasn't fine. Something had to change. Then the phone rang. It was the school. This is Miss Thompson, Tyler's teacher. We need you to come in immediately, she said, her tone serious. My stomach dropped. I rushed to the school, my mind racing. Had Tyler gotten into trouble? Was he hurt? When I arrived, Miss Thompson's expression was grim. "Mrs. Walker, Tyler has made a serious accusation against you." "What? What are you talking about?" I asked, my heart pounding. "He claims you've been physically abusing him," she said quietly. The world stopped. "That's impossible. I would never." I felt like I was drowning. Miss Thompson didn't waver. "We take these allegations very seriously. Child Protective Services has been notified." Just then, James burst in. "What's going on?" Miss Thompson explained the situation. I turned to James, desperate for him to defend me. "You know this isn't true, right?" But James looked torn. He turned to Tyler. "Is this true? Did Harper hurt you?" Tyler, avoiding eye contact, nodded. "Last week, she hit me while you were at work." "That never happened," I shouted, losing my composure. A CPS worker arrived soon after. "Mrs. Walker, we'll need you to leave the family home during our investigation." "Leave?" But I didn't do anything. James finally spoke, his voice low. "Maybe it's for the best, Harper, just until we figure this out." It felt like a slap. "You can't seriously believe this." James wouldn't meet my eyes. "I don't know what to believe right now." In a daze, I packed a bag and called Olivia. "Can I stay with you? I'll explain everything when I get there." At her apartment, I broke down. Between sobs, I told her everything. "That little brat." Olivia fumed. "And James, how dare he not stand up for you?" "I don't know what to do, Liv. My whole life is falling apart." Olivia hugged me tight. "First things first, we're getting you a lawyer. I know just the person." The next day, we met with Sandra Davis, a sharp-eyed attorney specializing in family law. "This is a serious situation, Harper," Sandra said, "but false accusations do happen. We'll fight this." Back at work, whispers followed me everywhere. "Did you hear Harper beat her stepson?" my colleague Mark asked. I always thought there was something off about her. Later, Mark approached my desk. "Tough break, huh? Kids say the darndest things." "He's lying, Mark. I didn't touch him," I said through gritted teeth. "Hey, I'm just saying, where there's smoke." He trailed off as I stormed away, locking myself in the bathroom. I called Olivia, my voice shaking. "I can't do this, Liv. Everyone thinks I'm a monster." "Listen to me," Olivia said, her voice steady. "You were strong. You were innocent. We'll get through this." As I hung up, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I looked tired, scared, but there was a spark of determination in my eyes. "I will not let them break me," I whispered to myself. "I will fight this, and I will win." In the following weeks, Sandra and I worked tirelessly to build my case. "We need character witnesses," she explained. "Anyone who can vouch for your relationship with Tyler." I thought hard. Mr. Peterson, he's seen me with Tyler at company picnics. When I called, Mr. Peterson didn't hesitate. "Of course I'll testify. I've seen you with Tyler. You're patient and kind." Tears welled up as I hung up. At least someone believed in me. Sandra also arranged for a psychological evaluation. After several sessions, Dr. Ramirez concluded, "I see no signs of abusive tendencies. In fact, you show a strong desire to nurture and protect." It was a small victory, but I'd take what I could get. Meanwhile, James had gone radio silent. The few times he did reach out, it was all about him. "People are talking, Harper. This is really affecting my business," he said one day. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Your business, James? My entire life is falling apart." He hung up without another word. A few days later, Olivia called, her voice tight with anger. "You won't believe what I just heard." "What now?" I sighed. "I was at Starbucks and overheard James talking to some neighbors. He was bad-mouthing you, Harper, saying you should have known better than to marry someone he barely knew." The betrayal stung like a physical blow. He said that. After everything I've done for him and Tyler? "I'm so sorry, honey. You deserve better than this," Olivia said gently. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Miss Thompson, Tyler's teacher, contacted Sandra, requesting an urgent meeting. "I've noticed some inconsistencies in Tyler's story," she explained, looking uncomfortable. "And, well, I did some digging. This isn't the first time Tyler has made false accusations." My heart raced. "What do you mean?" Miss Thompson sighed. "Last year, he accused a teacher of favoritism when he didn't get the lead in the school play. It was investigated and found to be completely fabricated." Sandra leaned forward. "And you're just bringing this up now?" "I feel terrible," Miss Thompson admitted. "I should have looked into this history more thoroughly before escalating things. I'm here to make it right." As the investigation deepened, more truths came to light. Tyler's school counselor revealed a pattern of manipulative behavior, often playing James and me against each other. Tyler shows signs of severe emotional neglect, the counselor explained. He creates trauma to get attention. It all started making sense, the acting out, the lies, the manipulation. Tyler was crying out for help in the worst way possible, but the most shocking revelation came from Tyler's best friend, Kevin. In a moment of guilt, Kevin confessed to Sandra that Tyler had bragged about his plan. He said he was going to make up stuff about his stepmom so his dad would kick her out. Kevin admitted. He said his dad always believes him and buys him stuff to make up for it. I felt a whirlwind of emotions, anger, pity, and heartbreak. Tyler had been hurting for so long, and James had been too blind to see it. As the truth unraveled, I couldn't help but think back to all the red flags I'd ignored. How James would brush off Tyler's bad behavior, the expensive gifts that appeared after every tantrum. I should have seen it, I told Olivia over coffee. I was so focused on making things work, I missed what was really going on. You can't blame yourself, Olivia said, squeezing my hand. You were trying to be a good wife and stepmom. I nodded, a new determination settling in. You're right, now it's time to start fighting for myself. The day the case was officially dropped should have felt like a victory, but it was bittersweet. My name was cleared, but the damage was done. I couldn't go back to that house, to James and Tyler. It wasn't home anymore. I met with Sandra to discuss the next steps. I want a divorce, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Sandra nodded, unsurprised. We'll cite James's lack of support and Tyler's false accusations. It should be straightforward. Straightforward, maybe, but not easy. Every signature on those papers felt like closing a chapter of my life I'd never get back. At work, I threw myself into every project. Mr. Peterson noticed. Harper, your performance these past few months has been exceptional, he said during my review. I'm promoting you to senior marketing director. I nearly fell out of my chair. Thank you, sir. I don't know what to say. He smiled. There's more. The position is in our New York office. A fresh start, if you want it. I didn't even hesitate. I'll take it. As I packed up my life, Olivia helped, filling me in on the local gossip. James is having a rough time, she said. Lost a bunch of clients when the truth came out. And Tyler, he got suspended for bullying. Guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I felt a twinge of something, not quite sympathy, but something close. I hope they got the help they needed. Both of them. New York was everything I needed. A new job, a new apartment, a new me. I even started volunteering at a youth center, mentoring kids from troubled homes. It felt good to use my experiences to help others. 2 years flew by, and one afternoon I was in my office reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant brought in a letter. The return address made my heart skip. Tyler's old school. Inside was a note from Miss Thompson. Dear Harper, I hope this letter finds you well. I'm writing to inform you that Tyler has been caught in a serious lie at his new school. He's facing expulsion. James has reached out for help, but I thought you should know. Sincerely, Miss Thompson. I sat back, a whirlwind of emotions hitting me. Part of me wanted to laugh at that irony. Another part itched for the troubled kid I tried so hard to help. You okay, boss? My assistant Jen asked. You look like you've seen a ghost. I smiled, folding the letter. Just a blast from the past, nothing to worry about. That night, as I got ready for my date with Michael, a kind, understanding man I'd met through my volunteer work, I thought about how far I'd come. 2 years ago, I was fighting to prove my innocence. Now, I was thriving in a job I loved, helping kids who needed it, and dating someone who respected me. As Michael and I walked to dinner, hand in hand, I realized something. I was happy, truly, genuinely happy. What are you smiling about? Michael asked, squeezing my hand. I looked up at the New York skyline, my adopted home, just thinking about how sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us to the best places. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Well, I'm glad whatever happened led you here. Me too, I thought. I'd survived, I'd thrived, and I'd found happiness. Meanwhile, those who had wronged me were facing the consequences of their actions. It wasn't about revenge, it was about justice, and the best revenge was living well. As we entered the restaurant, I made a decision. That letter, I wasn't going to respond. That chapter of my life was closed. I had a new story to write, and I couldn't wait to see how it unfolded. The story ends here, but the conversation is just beginning. What would you have done in Harper's shoes? If you received that letter about Tyler 2 years later, would you have responded, offering help despite the pain he caused? Or would you have kept that chapter firmly closed? Your experiences shape your perspective, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop your answer in the comments below. Hi, I'm Linda, a 32-year-old marketing executive trying to juggle work, family, and, wait for it, the world's most critical mother-in-law. Picture this. I'm in my kitchen, half-inflated balloons scattered everywhere, trying to organize Ethan's 6th birthday party, when my phone buzzes. It's Liam, my husband. "Hey, honey," he says cautiously. "Don't freak out, but Mom's coming a day early for Ethan's birthday." I nearly dropped the phone. "What?" "Liam, the house is a disaster. The party's tomorrow." I know, he sighs. She insisted. Said she wanted to help. "Help?" I mutter under my breath, like a tornado helps when it blows through town. But I take a deep breath and say, "Fine. Just keep her busy when she gets here, okay? Love you." After hanging up, I look around at the chaos. Superhero decorations everywhere. Ethan's special request. I've spent weeks planning this, determined to make everything perfect, even ordering the custom cake with his favorite character on it. But with Martha arriving early, I know things are about to get complicated. An hour later, the sound of Martha's car pulling into the driveway fills me with dread. I plaster on a fake smile as she breezes into the house, swinging her designer handbag like a trophy. "Oh, Brielle, darling," she says, air kissing my cheeks. "What interesting decorations." I bite my tongue. "Thanks, Martha." Ethan picked the theme. She eyes a Batman cutout with distaste. "Well, when Derek was young, we always had such elegant parties." I force a tight smile. "I'm sure you did." I turn away before my eyes can fully roll back in my head. She follows me into the kitchen, clicking her tongue at the dishes in the sink. "My goodness, Brielle, don't you ever clean?" "I've been a little busy with the party," I say through gritted teeth. "Well, let's see what you've done so far," she insists, rummaging through the party favors. "Oh dear, store-bought goodie bags. I always made homemade treats for Derek's friends." I force a laugh. "Not all of us have your talents, Martha." She pats my arm condescendingly. "Don't worry, dear. I'm sure the children won't mind too much." Just then, Ethan comes racing in, full of excitement. "Grandma, you're here early." Martha's face lights up. "There's my precious boy. Come give Grandma a hug." As they embrace, I can't help but feel a pang of jealousy. Why can't she ever be that warm with me? "Grandma, wanna see my cake?" Ethan asks, eyes wide with excitement. "I'm sure it's lovely, sweetie," Martha replies, throwing me a skeptical glance. "Though, I do hope it's not too commercial." I clench my fists. "It's from the best bakery in town, Martha. I'm sure it'll be great." She hums doubtfully. "Well, we'll see tomorrow, won't we?" As Martha leads Ethan away, I lean against the counter, exhausted. It's going to be a long 24 hours. Liam comes in, looking apologetic. "Hey, how's it going?" "Oh, just peachy," I say, giving him a pointed look. "Your mother's been here 10 minutes, and she's already planning to take over." He sighs. "I'm sorry. You know how she is. She means well." The she, I snap, then immediately regret it. "Sorry. I'm just stressed." Liam wraps his arms around me. "I know, but tomorrow will be great. Ethan will love it, and that's all that matters, right?" I nod, trying to believe him. The next morning, I wake up at dawn, heart racing with excitement and anxiety. Today's the big day. Martha or no Martha, I'm determined to make this perfect. I sneak out to pick up the cake, a superhero masterpiece I can't wait to show Ethan. But when I return home, my bubble bursts. Martha is circling the cake like a vulture. "Brielle," she says, her voice oozing fake sweetness, "is this really the cake you chose?" I take a deep breath. "Yes, Martha, it's exactly what Ethan wanted." She purses her lips. "Well, I suppose children don't have the most refined tastes." Before I can respond, the doorbell rings. Saved by the bell, literally, I put on my best smile and start welcoming guests. The next hour is a whirlwind of kids, presents, and me trying to keep everything under control while Liam keeps shooting worried glances between me and his mother. Then I hear Ethan shouting from the kitchen, "Grandma, no." I rush in, my heart in my throat, and see the nightmare in front of me. the custom superhero cake smashed on the floor, and Martha standing there smugly, holding a store-bought cake. "What happened?" I gasped. Martha sniffs. "That monstrosity wasn't good enough for my grandson. I got him a proper cake." Ethan bursts into tears. "I wanted my superhero cake." I kneel beside him, trying to comfort him, while glaring at Martha. "It's okay, sweetie, we can fix this." But the damage is done. The party is descending into chaos. Kids whispering, parents staring, and me caught between comforting Ethan and dealing with Martha. I shoot Liam a look. "Do something." He looks like a deer in headlights. "Mom, maybe you should." "Should what?" Martha interrupts, her voice dripping with superiority. "Save this disaster of a party? You're welcome, by the way." "That's it. I've had enough." "Everyone," I say, my voice trembling. "I'm so sorry, but we're going to have to end the party early." The next few minutes were a blur of rushed apologies and handing out goodie bags as I ushered the guests out. Finally, it was just the four of us. Meet Liam, Ethan, and Martha. Martha dusted off her hands, oblivious. "Well," she said, "that was certainly eventful." I turned to her, the fury bubbling up inside me. "Martha, I think you should leave." She blinked in surprise. "Leave? But the party's over." "Exactly, thanks to you," I snapped. Liam, finally finding his voice, chimed in. "Mom, I think Brielle's right. We need some family time." Martha huffed, gathering her things. Without another word, she marched out the door. As it clicked shut, I slumped against the wall, utterly drained. "I'm sorry, babe," Liam said, wrapping his arm around me, but I shrugged him off. "Not now, Liam. We need to salvage this for Ethan." We spent the rest of the evening trying to cheer up our little boy, playing games, opening presents, even managing to piece together some of the original cake. By bedtime, Ethan was smiling again, but I was still seething. As I tucked him in, I made a silent vow. Martha would never ruin another family event. I didn't know how, but I was going to put a stop to her toxic behavior once and for all. The days following Ethan's birthday felt like walking through a fog. I couldn't shake the anger, the humiliation, the sheer unfairness of it all. Liam tried to comfort me, but his reassurances felt hollow. How could he not see how much his mother was damaging our family? Desperate for an outlet, I called my best friend Zoe. After pouring out everything, she didn't hold back. "Girl, you've got to stand up to that woman. This has been going on for years." "I know," I sighed, "but how?" "Liam always takes her side and the rest of his family is completely under her spell." "Document everything," Zoe suggested. "Every nasty comment, every backhanded compliment. Build your case." It was like a light bulb went off. I started keeping a file on my phone, jotting down every interaction with Martha, the texts criticizing my parenting, the voicemails laced with passive-aggressive jabs, the helpful suggestions that always left me feeling 2 inches tall. I even started seeing a therapist, Dr. Chen, to unpack the years of Martha's toxicity. "You're not crazy, Brielle," Dr. Chen told me during one session. "What you're experiencing is emotional abuse." Hearing it spoken out loud was both validating and terrifying. But Martha wasn't done with me yet. One afternoon, I overheard Liam on the phone with his cousin. "No, Mom's just worried about Ethan, that's all. You know how Brielle can be sometimes." As soon as he hung up, I confronted him. "What was that about?" Liam looked like a kid caught stealing candy. Nothing, just family stuff." "Family stuff? Like your mother telling everyone I'm an unfit mom?" His silence was all the confirmation I needed. "Liam, this has to stop. Don't you see what she's doing to us?" He ran a hand through his hair. "Look, maybe if you just apologize to her about the birthday thing." I couldn't believe my ears. Apologize? For what? For trying to give our son a nice birthday before she ruined it. "Bri, please," he begged. "It would make things easier for everyone." That was my breaking point. I realized that if things were going to change, I'd have to be the one to make it happen. The next day, I got a text from Martha. "Dropping by this afternoon to check on my grandson. Hope you've managed to keep the house clean this time." As I stared at the message, a plan started to form. It was time to take action, not just for me, but for Ethan and the future of our family. I called Zoe. "Hey, I need a favor," I said. "Can you come over this afternoon and bring your video camera?" "Oh, sounds intriguing," she replied. "What's the plan?" I took a deep breath. "We're going to expose Martha for who she really is. I'm done being her punching bag." As I hung up, A mix of nerves and determination surged through me. I glanced at a photo of Ethan on my desk, his bright smile reminding me why this fight was so important. "Don't worry, buddy," I whispered. "Mommy's going to fix this." Thanksgiving arrived, and my heart raced as we pulled up to Liam's parents' house. I clutched my bag, filled with evidence of Martha's years of manipulation. As we walked inside, Martha swooped down on us like a hawk. "Oh, there's my darling Ethan. Brielle, dear, you look tired. Are you sleeping enough?" she said, her tone dripping with false concern. I bit my tongue, reminding myself to stick to the plan. Finally, as everyone gathered in the living room, I knew it was time. "Actually, Martha," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "I'd like to address something with the family." She waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, Brielle, now's not the time for your little dramas." But this time, I wasn't backing down. I pulled out my phone and said, "I think you all need to hear this." The room fell silent as I played recording after recording of Martha's harsh words. Texts criticizing my parenting flashed on the screen. Gasps echoed as the family heard their own experiences reflected in my evidence. "This has been happening for years," I explained. "And it's not just me. How many of you have quietly suffered under Martha's love?" Slowly, hands began to rise. Cousins, aunts, even Martha's own sister nodded in recognition. "Mom, is this true?" Liam asked, his voice heavy. "Have you really been treating Brielle, and all of us, like this?" Martha's face flushed as she sputtered. "I was only trying to help. You all need guidance." "No, Mom," Liam interrupted, his tone firm. "What we need is respect and kindness. You haven't been giving that to any of us." Martha looked around, desperate for an ally, but found none. "You're all turning against me after everything I've done for this family." Liam's father finally spoke up. "Martha, I think it's time you left." In the whirlwind that followed, Martha was escorted out, and suddenly everyone wanted to talk. Stories poured out. Years of frustration, hurt, and silent suffering. Liam and I focused on healing. He started therapy, working through years of enabling behavior, and we set clear boundaries with the family. We learned to communicate better, and most importantly, we protected Ethan from Martha's toxic influence. Ethan thrived. His laughter filled our home, and the tension that had long been an undercurrent in our lives finally lifted. A year later, we celebrated Ethan's 7th birthday. The party was everything I had hoped for, joyous, drama-free, filled with love and laughter. As I watched Ethan blow out his candles, surrounded by genuine smiles, a wave of pride washed over me. We had come so far. Liam wrapped his arm around my waist. "You did it, babe. You saved our family." I leaned into him. "We did it together." He kissed my forehead. "I'm so sorry it took me so long to see the truth. But I'm here now, and I promise no one will ever treat you like that again." As I looked around at our happy home, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. Now that you've heard my story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Was I right to expose Martha's behavior, or should family issues stay private? How would you have handled the situation? Share your experiences in the comments.